The rooms I still hear you in. Before the silence had a name. I don't know when exactly the silence between us became louder than the arguments, but I can tell you the moment I realized it had teeth. It wasn't during a fight. It wasn't when she slammed a door or when I walked out to cool off. It was a Tuesday evening, 2 months before she left, when she came home from work and didn't even look in my direction. No hello. No sigh. No acknowledgement that I was sitting 8 feet away on the couch we bought together the week we got engaged. She walked past me, set her bag down, and went straight into the shower. No music playing from her phone. No humming. Just the sound of the pipes rattling in the walls, and the faint scent of the eucalyptus body wash she'd switched to without telling me. I remember lowering the TV volume, thinking she was upset about work. Or tired. Or overwhelmed. Or any of the 1,000 explanations that still included me. But when she came out, wrapped in a towel and scrolling through her phone with dead eyes, she didn't glance at me once. Not even when she passed through the living room again, hair wet and dripping onto the hardwood. It wasn't anger. It wasn't tension. It was vacancy. And something in me, something quiet and terrified, recognized it as the beginning of the end. I didn't say anything that night. Or the next. Or the one after that. I told myself it would pass, that not every silence meant goodbye. But even hope has a sense of smell, and mine already caught the scent of departure. Back then, I still believed breakups came with warning shots, slammed drawers, accusations, tears on kitchen floors. I thought endings had declarations, ultimatums, thrown rings, confessions screamed in parked cars. But you don't realize until it happens to you, some people don't leave like a fire. They leave like frost. Quiet. Incremental. I see enough that you don't feel the numbness until you look down and see what's already dead. The morning she finally walked out, it was barely 7 a.m. The sky was still bruised with leftovers of night. She had on jeans and a sweater I didn't recognize, like she'd been rehearsing a version of herself I was never meant to meet. She stood in the doorway of the kitchen holding a mug of coffee she didn't drink and said, "There's nothing left here for me. Not us. Not you. Here." Like the life we built was just a room she'd grown bored of. I asked if there was someone else. She said no. I asked if she hated me. She said no. I asked if she loved me. She didn't answer. You'd think that's the moment that wrecked me, but it wasn't. The real destruction came hours later, when I opened the closet and saw the space her shoes had lived in. Empty. A silent, rectangular absence in the shape of what I failed to keep. You don't cry when someone walks out the door. You cry when you see the places they won't ever stand again. And I did, on the floor of the hallway, surrounded by my own ugly breathing and the echo of cabinets she didn't close all the way. The first night without her tasted like static. The world didn't end. It just forgot to include me in it. I went to work the next day, acting like my bones didn't feel borrowed. Everyone asked if I was sick. I said no. No one believed me, but no one pressed. That's the thing about adults, we can bleed out in plain sight and people will politely pretend not to notice. The most humiliating part wasn't that she left. It was how easily the world moved on without asking me if I was coming. Ghosts don't knock, they linger. The first week after she left, I kept expecting the door to open. Not dramatically. Not with apologies or tears or some cinematic breakdown. Just, casually. Like she'd forgotten her charger. Or her scarf. Or her nerve. I'd hear footsteps in the hallway outside the flat and pause whatever I was doing. Sometimes I'd stand perfectly still, waiting for the sound of keys at the lock. I even left the chain unhooked, just in case. Stupid, right? It's amazing how grief can make hope wear a clown suit. I didn't throw her things out. Not at first. Her drawer in the dresser stayed untouched for weeks. I'd open it sometimes just to stare at the little loose threads on her folded shirts, as if they were clues to where I went wrong. I thought about messaging her 1,000 times a day. I typed out paragraphs then deleted them before my thumb could betray me. Some said I missed her. Some said I hated her. Some said I hoped she was okay. Most said nothing beyond the raw static inside me. The silence in the flat rearranged itself hourly. Morning quiet was the worst. There was a certain sound she used to make when she got ready, not humming, not talking, just her shuffling around, opening drawers, clinking her ring on the counter when she leaned for her mascara. That absence rang louder than any argument we'd ever had. I started sleeping on the couch even though the bed was fine. The bed felt like a museum exhibit about a life I'd been evicted from. Our mutual friends pretended not to know yet, but I could see it in their eyes, the careful phrasing, the pauses before saying her name, like they were afraid it might detonate something in me. My brother asked if I wanted to stay at his place for a few days. I said no. I didn't tell him it was because I was still convinced she'd return and think I'd abandoned the wreckage too early. I kept working. I answered emails. I made coffee. I paid bills. I functioned like a reasonably stable human, if you didn't look directly at the fracture lines. But grief has a way of announcing itself through stupid, mundane things. One Thursday afternoon I opened the fridge and saw the jar of apricot jam she liked. I hadn't bought it, it was left from before. The expiration date was in 2 weeks. I just stood there, door open, staring at it until the cold made my eyes water. I threw it away. Then I dug it out of the bin and put it back. Then I threw it away again. The third time I couldn't find the lid and panicked like I'd lost a vital organ. I sat on the kitchen floor holding that stupid jar like it was a newborn or a grenade. That was the first time I realized I wasn't sad. I was haunted. There's a difference. Sadness is heavy but still yours to carry. Haunting is when even your shadow doesn't feel like it belongs to you. The nights were elastic, stretching far beyond their edges. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find myself scrolling through old photographs, trying to convince myself we'd actually lived those moments and I hadn't just dreamt a woman into existence and lost her to the morning. The worst part? I wasn't angry at her yet. I wished I were. Anger is hot. Anger gives you something to throw. Instead, I was cold and hollow and nauseatingly patient, like a dog waiting at a door that no longer leads anywhere. People say time heals, but they forget to mention it also erases. Every day that passed without her felt like proof she was good at living without me. And the world doesn't sympathize with the replaced. By the third week, I convinced myself she had a reason. Maybe her ex was sick. Maybe she had a breakdown. Maybe she'd come back to explain everything and I'd get to be the bigger person. Maybe this was temporary. Maybe I was. On day 22, I donated half the furniture. I told the guy from the charity shop that I was downsizing. He nodded politely, the way you do when someone lies to you with their whole face. That night, I slept in my bed again for the first time since she left. The sheets didn't smell like her anymore. I don't know why that hurt worse than if they still had. And here's something I never told anyone, I rehearse. Not conversations, moments. The sound I'd make if I heard her key. The way I'd pretend to be surprised. The neutral tone in my voice when I'd say her name as though it had never once been holy. I never practiced anger. Just composure. I always thought I'd want to scream at her if she came back. But the truth is, I'd give anything just to witness myself not falling apart in front of her. You don't crave justice when your heart's been split. You crave dignity. They're not the same thing. I wish the story ended here. With me pathetic but recovering. With her gone and me rebuilding. But that's not how people like her work. And it's not how men like me get to heal. She did come back. Just not in the way I expected. Echoes pretend to be footsteps before they hit the door. She didn't knock. I need you to understand that first. There was no text warning me. No call. Not even one of those vague "can we talk" messages people send when they want the emotional credit of honesty without the risk of being told no. I was coming back from the mailbox empty, as usual, when I saw her sitting on the floor outside my flat door. Cross-legged. Elbows on her knees. Head tilted back against the wall. Like she'd just gotten tired of existing somewhere else. For a moment, I truly believed I was hallucinating. My brain tried to protect me by insisting it wasn't real. That she was some shape-shifted memory I hadn't yet buried. My keys almost slipped from my hand. She stood up slowly, brushing off her jeans like she was embarrassed to be caught waiting. She gave this small, apologetic smile like she was late for dinner, not 2 months gone from our shared life. I didn't speak. I didn't open the door. I didn't trust myself to even blink in her direction too forcefully. She said my name. Softly. Too softly. Like she still owned the right to use that tone. And something in me, some leftover muscle memory, almost responded with warmth. Almost. But then I thought about the night I sat on the bathroom floor shaving my face with cold water because I couldn't bear to stand in the shower alone. I thought about the jam jar. About the empty closet. About every sound the flat didn't make because she took it with her. So instead, I said, "What do you want?" I didn't invite her in. I didn't ask if she was okay. My voice was flat, but my hands were shaking in my coat pockets. She looked at the door as if expecting it to open itself. Then back at me. I needed to see you. Needed. Not wanted. Not asked. Needed. Like I was an errand. I told her she'd seen me. That she could leave now. She flinched, and for one disturbing second, I felt guilty. That's how deep the conditioning goes. You can be abandoned and still apologize for not being softer when the person who left decides to test the hinges. She asked if we could talk properly. I said no. She said she wasn't here to fight. I said that made one of us. Then she said something that nearly split me in half. I made a mistake. I swear the hallway went quiet in a new way. Like the walls themselves were trying to eavesdrop. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't owe her prompts. She kept talking anyway. Told me she'd gone to stay with friends for a while, then with her sister. Said she thought space would make things clearer. Said she thought leaving would fix something inside her. Said she thought I'd wait. Said she didn't expect me to move on so quickly. That last part made me laugh out loud, and it wasn't a kind laugh. It was the kind of sound that makes dogs uneasy. She said it hurt her to see me acting like I didn't care. As if my grief was supposed to parade itself where she could admire it. I asked if there was someone else. She said there was, briefly. That it wasn't what she thought. That he wasn't me. That she missed the life we had. And then God help me, she cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just tears sliding down her cheeks like she hadn't given them permission. She kept wiping them with her sleeve, like spilling emotion was messy and she hadn't planned to clean up in front of me. She asked if she could come inside. I told her no. She said, "Please." And I heard it, the crack in her. The desperation. But I remembered something crucial in that moment. Just because someone regrets their choice doesn't mean you're obligated to help them recover from it. She said she still loved me. I said, "You don't love me. You miss being loved." She stopped crying. It was like I'd taken a broom to a spiderweb. The illusion snapped. She stood there, breathing hard through her nose, eyes glassy and furious in that silent, self-pitying way people get when they realize the person they left didn't freeze in time waiting to be reclaimed. And then she said the line I'll never forget. "I didn't think you'd make it this hard." As if forgiveness was a vending machine and she'd simply forgotten her coins. I didn't slam the door. Didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. I just stepped around her, unlocked the flat, and went inside. Before I closed the door, I said, without looking directly at her, "You taught me how to live without you." I paid attention. And then I closed it. Gently. Quietly. Permanently. But don't mistake that for triumph. Closure doesn't clap for you. It just stops screaming. I didn't collapse. I didn't celebrate. I just stood in my hallway staring at the dent in the wall where her suitcase once hit during an argument over nothing. And I listened for footsteps walking away. I didn't hear them. She stayed out there a while. Maybe hoping the door would open again. Maybe realizing it no longer recognized her. That was the night I slept without dreaming of her. Not because I was healed. But because even my subconscious was too exhausted to keep chasing someone who thought regret was a free pass back into the house she burned. Healing doesn't feel like winning. She didn't knock again. Not that night. Not the next day. Not in the weeks that followed. But that's not the same as leaving me alone. Regret has a way of lingering like perfume on old coats, invisible, invasive, always pretending it has the right to stay. That evening after I shut the door on her, I didn't pour myself a drink. Didn't sit dramatically in the dark. Didn't call anyone to tell them what happened. I just stood there in the entryway until my legs reminded me I was still made of blood and gravity. There was no lightning bolt of pride. No rush of accomplishment for refusing her. Just a deep, hollow ache that felt suspiciously like being sober after months of being drunk on denial. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was subtraction. I went to bed early. Not because I was tired, but because staying awake felt like volunteering for extra grief. And for the first time since she left, I didn't imagine the sound of her keys in the lock. That silence wasn't comforting, but it didn't bleed me. It just existed. And I let it. The next morning, the world was aggressively normal. I made coffee in the mug she bought me 2 birthdays ago. I hated that I still used it. I hated more that I didn't throw it out. Part of me wanted to smash it in the sink, part of me didn't want to give her the satisfaction of being the reason I ruined a perfectly functioning object. I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. And here's the part I'm not proud of: I felt both relief and an absence so sharp it pressed against my teeth. I went to work. I answered emails. I sat through meetings where people debated pointless changes to things that didn't matter. I nodded when spoken to. I was polite but vague. I could feel something in me settling into a new shape. Not better. Just arranged differently so the cracks didn't show as much in public. I didn't tell anyone she'd come back. Some stories don't survive retelling, they rot in the air or turn you into something pitiful when you speak them out loud. I kept this one in my chest like a bruise under a jacket. But grief is rarely content with quiet. It finds little ways to remind you it's not gone, it's nesting. About a week after she showed up, I opened a box from the top of my wardrobe looking for old tax papers. Inside were birthday cards she'd written me. Little notes she'd tucked into my suitcase once when I traveled for work. Ticket stubs. Polaroids. Receipts from cafes we didn't even like. The handwriting punched harder than her voice had. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding a card from our second anniversary. She'd drawn a tiny heart in the corner of the envelope. I remember joking that it looked like a potato. She'd laughed and told me it was anatomically defensive. Back then, everything between us felt permanent because neither of us had tried to break it yet. I didn't cry. I wanted to. It would have been easier. But tears require belief in something worth mourning. I think I'd slipped past that point. All I felt was the yawning stretch of used to. I packed the box back up and shoved it under the bed instead of the wardrobe. Not because I planned to revisit it, but because some part of me wanted it closer, in case I needed proof I hadn't imagined love. People talk about closure like it's a locked door. In reality, it's more like discovering the door was never real, just painted on a wall you kept walking into because someone told you it opened once. The weirdest part was how my body adjusted before my brain did. I stopped checking my phone obsessively. I stopped freezing when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I started filling the dishwasher at night instead of leaving everything until morning. Mundane, microscopic shifts that added up to something resembling life. And then, the dreams changed. I used to dream of her hands, her voice, the sound she made when she stretched in the morning. After she left, the dreams turned to arguments rewritten with better endings. Then to reenactments of the last day, but with her choosing me instead. But around the time she came back and I said no, the dream stopped featuring her at all. One night, I dreamt I was painting a room I didn't recognize. Another, I was walking through an airport with no luggage. Another, I was sitting in a cafe reading a book and every table around me was empty. It wasn't happiness. But it was the absence of her shadow, and that felt dangerously close to a beginning. Days turned into weeks and she didn't try contacting me again. Not directly, anyway. Our mutual friend Jess texted me once to ask, in a roundabout way, if I'd be open to a conversation down the line. I told Jess, there is no line. That night, I slept for 7 uninterrupted hours. But healing God, I hate that word, is not linear. It's not even shaped like anything sensible. It's more like stepping on broken glass in the dark. Some nights you'll cross the room barefoot and feel nothing. Other nights, the tiniest shard will remind you of everything you lost and everything you almost let back in. About a month after her doorstep visit, I saw her by accident. Grocery store. Frozen aisle. She was holding a box of something and staring into the freezer like it was giving her instructions. She didn't see me at first. My heart didn't collapse. My lungs didn't revolt. I just stopped walking. She looked smaller. Or maybe she was finally the size she'd always been without my love inflating her sense of importance. I turned around before she could notice me. Left my basket with a stranger near the produce section and walked out. In the car, I sat with my hands on the wheel and waited for the shaking that never came. My pulse stayed even. My throat stayed dry. My eyes stayed clear. I didn't feel nothing. I felt something quieter, confirmation. You don't always get revenge. You don't always get understanding. But sometimes, if you're stupidly patient and unbearably honest with yourself, you get distance. And distance is the only thing that makes a ghost remember it's not welcome. When regret starts speaking in full sentences. It was almost 3 months to the day since she knocked on my door with those glassy eyes and slippery excuses. Enough time for the air in my flat to stop smelling like her hair products. Enough time for my bones to stop mistaking longing for identity. Enough time for my pulse to stop tying itself in knots whenever my phone buzzed. Which is exactly when she tried again. Not in person, this time. A letter of all things. Handwritten. Folded twice. Slipped under my door at some point between me leaving for work and coming back home. I saw the corner of it on the floor the second I stepped in, and something in me reacted like it was a snake. I didn't pick it up right away. I walked past it, put my keys on the counter, took off my coat, washed my hands, opened the fridge, stared inside as if I'd forgotten why I was standing there. Only when I closed it did I glance down at the paper again. Seeing her handwriting was like being startled by your own reflection after a drastic haircut. You recognize it before you want to admit you do. For a full 2 minutes, I considered throwing it away unopened. Straight into the bin. No ceremony. No final look. Just disposal. But curiosity is a treacherous organ. It always thinks it's stronger than pain. I sat at the kitchen table and unfolded it. It didn't start with "Dear." It didn't start with my name. It started with "I know I don't deserve to ask you to read this." I won't recite the whole thing, but here's what stuck. She said she left because she felt hollow and thought the emptiness had something to do with me. She said she realized too late that she'd been looking at our life like it was wallpaper instead of shelter. She said the man she left me for wasn't a replacement but an excuse that she needed someone to disrespect in order to justify running from someone who didn't. She said the silence she ran to was louder than anything she imagined. She said the night I closed the door on her was the first time she saw herself clearly from the outside. She said she wasn't asking to come back. She said she knew she couldn't ask. She said she just wanted me to know she understood now what she threw away. And then, the final line. If you ever decide to hate me, please do it knowing I already beat you to it. I must have read that line 15 times. Not because it hurt, it didn't. Not like before. But because it was the first honest thing she'd said without expecting a reward. I folded the letter back up and put it in the drawer where batteries and old receipts go to die. Not out of sentiment. Out of classification. She texted the next day. A simple. Did you get the letter? I stared at it for so long my phone screen went dark twice. Then I typed back. Yes. She replied. Do you want to say anything? I could have written a novel. I could have said I spent months disassembling the version of myself that believed love was supposed to hurt before it counted. I could have confessed how long it took me to stop waiting for her ghost to ask permission to climb back into my bed. I could have told her I hated her on Tuesdays and forgave her on Thursdays and felt nothing on Sundays. Instead, I wrote. No. She didn't respond. And that silence for the first time felt like mine. Here's the part everyone skips when they talk about moving on. You don't wake up one morning and realize you're over them. You just wake up and realize you didn't inventory your pain before brushing your teeth. She didn't break me when she left. She broke me while she was here. Her leaving just stopped the bleeding long enough for me to see where the wounds were. Some nights I still hear echoes of the life we almost had. But echoes can't hurt you, they can only remind you you're standing somewhere with better acoustics now. A friend asked me recently if I'd ever take her back if she showed up one day healed and genuinely changed. I didn't even need to think. I said, if she became the version of herself I needed back then, she wouldn't need me now. People call that bitterness. I call it arithmetic. And me? I'm not happy, not yet. But I'm not waiting at the door anymore. And that counts for something. If she writes again, I won't read it. If she calls, I won't answer. If she shows up, she'll meet my absence, not my anger. Because the opposite of love isn't hate, it's vacancy. And that's what she built when she left, even if she didn't mean to, a space where I finally had room to exist without her name taking up all the walls.